I was held down essentially by my cousins, and my grandmother went and grabbed this big old kitchen butcher knife. It was kind of like she was like, there's nothing wrong with you, so let's open you up and see what they thought was wrong with you. Well, my upbringing was very stressful for the family. I had a heart attack when I was 3 weeks old. Um, Living in a hospital for the first year of my life. All of this was in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. I'll kind of double back on that because it's a, a nationwide thing that's going on with the federal government and a lot of people that were affected by the water in Camp Lejeune. I was one of them. And so, but that's a whole nother situation that we'll get into. But essentially, after that, I was told, well, my father was told that I wouldn't make it past the first year of my life. If I do, and if I happen to make it to the age of 5, then a surgery could essentially postpone my life. So, I mean that happened, but you know, a lot of things in between that, being separated from the home, being put in the system, group homes, foster homes, living in that life, and then eventually, landing in my grandmother's care, which is my biological mom's mother. She was, to say the least, she was super strict. She was Baptist in faith, of course. So, anyone know anything about Baptists and how they go to church? It's a Monday, Wednesday, God, Friday, Saturday, Sunday thing. It's literally a full time slash part time job. But for a kid, it's kind of like the pits. It would have been enjoyable if there wasn't any abuse going on in the home. My grandma was very creative in the ways in which she used to administer discipline. Um, use handcuffs, starvation. I remember I was handcuffed to a water heater for 4 hours in the basement. That was terrifying for any kid. That was kind of hard to get through. Um, a lot of physical abuse that was happening in the church as well. So that kind of, you know, um, started my path to resentment as a child. It was fostered into my spirit as a child when those things were happening. Um, the the physical abuse turned to sexual abuse. All of this happening while being in church around the church members. They were very full aware of what was going on, and I remember a lot of times that we were threatened not to say anything, and this is me and my brothers. Um, so it was all kept silent. I remember my dad used to come visit me, visit us. Um, my mother used to come visit us. We were sworn to secrecy about it. We were essentially threatened. If we spoke up, there would be this specific harm that would happen to, whomever family member that we decided to open up to. So it was a dirty little secret. I eventually had there was one instance where like not too long, maybe like 2 months after my heart surgery when I was 5, and it was at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Um, I was held down essentially by my cousins, and my grandmother went and grabbed this big old kitchen butcher knife. It was kind of like she was like, there's nothing wrong with you, so let's open you up and see what they thought was wrong with you. And she essentially, I couldn't break free of that. I was being held down by teenagers, and I'm a kid who's still trying to heal. So it was just very, I was fighting. I felt fight or flight at that point. Um, Little did I know that she was, just playing around, but it was a cruel game. Essentially, my dad used to, come around and by himself, and then he started coming around with whom is my stepmother now. Um, Very, very nice woman. I think she was the the key that changed all of our lives. But one day he came home and he came into my grandmother's home, told us all to get dressed and go to the car. And that was the last day we were over there. I mean, we went from being essentially tortured in every single way. I mean, we didn't have no childhood. We were locked in a third floor back room with bars on the window, mattresses on the floor, no carpeting. It was just like a wooden plank floor. We were just left up there, just in the back. We went from, just all kind of things that you wouldn't believe that would just be Hollywood based to having a life with your father. It was just kind of like a snap of the finger, and all that changed. Um, Living with her though, that created the resentment for me to never step foot in the church ever again. And I lived that life for a very long time. I didn't believe in God. I mean, there was in and I didn't believe in God, and I was like, since there is no God, like why there, because he didn't save us from that. Like we went through that. Like that was real. I mean, the bruises, the welts, the cuts, the like all of that. Like where was God? We were kids. Like why? If there was a God, why would you let children go through that? Like I don't understand. I could never understand that. Like these were supposed to be my cousin's supposed to quote unquote love me, but you're doing things to me, like you're touching me, you're doing things to me. You know what I mean? And th- where's my savior at that time? It didn't exist. And we were being, to me, feel like I was being spoon fed stories that weren't true, So yeah, I believe there was no God, since three. I mean, I didn't know till now that, I mean, yeah, he had his hand in all of what has been going on, but I mean, I 3 weeks old, I wasn't supposed to live. I barely lived. I had a pretty intensive surgery for a 5-year old. Um, it wasn't even, and even after that, was told that there's no guarantee that you were going to make it. So where's the God in that? Like, and then church, I mean, Jesus, like church, like that it was just like, anything that resembled a church home, like I promised myself I would never step foot in. Anyone that even talked about it, I would stray away from anyone who ever talked about it. I mean, and for example, when we were living in California, when my dad took us to California from Philadelphia. When a Jehovah's Witness knocked on my door, like I quickly slammed it in their face. Like, I didn't even waste my time. I didn't even put any energy to say anything derogatory. None of that. It was just, boom, and just went on about my business. I didn't want to hear it. Anyone that, my uncle was still in church. He would come from Philadelphia from time to time, and he would preach, and we would just be like, that's BS, Unc. Like we're not trying to hear this, man. We're gone. But he's just like, he's trying to save you. I said, no, the person that saved me was my dad. Like he saved us. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Like, and we never told them what we were going through. It was just, they were puzzled. Like, what do you mean he saved you? Like, and we would just say that, go out and try to recapture a childhood that was essentially stolen from us. So we didn't know about summer vacations and what it was like to go out and have fun, like 4th of July's. We didn't know anything about that, like barbecues and parties, and we didn't know anything. We were already locked up as kids, and we didn't even do anything. And then just having a life with my dad and my stepmom, it was a breath of fresh air. It was totally different. Now, of course, there was still we were still traumatized from that life. So it was a hard adjustment period for my father, because he was just like, why are my boys so out of control? He didn't understand. So his military style of discipline kicked in, and to us it was like it started all over again. We thought we were safe, and then we weren't safe. We just went from one domineering person to the next. And that was hard because this was my dad at this time. Um, he did some things that were, it was more of a lot of the physical things that he did, um, that called a question. Made my stepmom look at him differently. I do remember at one point she was just like, um, if you continue to do these things, I'm going to take these boys and I'm going to leave you. And I think at that point that's when he began to turn it all around, because of course, he did all this to get us, and then to do that, it was just didn't seem right. It wasn't until my junior and soft or senior year of high school that I started to, get involved with drugs. I was introduced to in California. I was introduced to a myriad of things. It was, LSD, ecstasy, methamphetamines. Of course, marijuana was all over. That's just California. Um, but yeah, I went from using and learning how to distribute it to uh, growing, and it was exciting to me. I kind of took a shining to it. I knew a lot of people that use these things, so it was like, okay, well, it made sense to me. Why not? So my first job was working at McDonald's, and I had another job working at a like a family fun center, so to speak, kind of like a shenanigans, something like that. Um, and then I eventually stopped working at those places, and I started, making money the other way. And it was fun. I was going to all the parties. I was popular. It was just like, it was great. It was just like, being like 18, 19 years old. You know, selling drugs and going to parties and living that California lifestyle. It was the best. It was like my life was just a consistent party, and I got stuck in that mind frame. Then I met Sean, and Sean was the one that introduced me to the partying and drugs, and I started hanging out with him, and then, and all that came to a crash when I had got my kid's mom pregnant, my first son, and I had to really, like, that was my first moment of having to figure out what am I gonna do. Um, we ended up moving to Las Vegas, you know, and lived in Vegas for a couple years, and then, I got the word that Texas was, cheaper in cost of living, and so, and that at that time in the early 2000s, 2001, the internet was just now being, a place of resource. And so I got online and I started looking, and I was just like, wow, these one bedrooms are for like $300. Like, what? Where they do that at? I'm going. So I had this job as a security guard, and I just started stacking money doing that, and I started stacking money from other ways too. So by the time we got out there, and we got out there, like right after Justice was born. It's about like January of 2001. We get out there and get this apartment. It was like, it had the money, so it was no problem. Furnished it really quick. But then I realized I moved to Copper's Cove, and that's like the middle of nowhere, like population 3. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was terrible. I was like, okay, I moved from where I had all the resources in the world to be able to make money, whether if I wanted a job or, keep my street job. I moved out to Texas, and I was just like, I have none of that. Like, so now the pressures of growing up was like, boom. And then I was like, man, and I got this medicine I got to upkeep. I don't have any insurance, blah, blah, blah. I started freaking out. I eventually get this job in at Bell's, which is a retail spot in Copper's Cove, and I started meeting all kind of people from the neighborhood. So I started meeting the element to where I could get back into it. But out here, it was like I didn't trust anybody. You know what I mean? So like trust was a big key for me to be able to do that out there, because I sold to who I knew. So it wasn't like this was someone brand new. I would never change hands with someone that was brand new. It was always somebody who I knew. I knew. So like, look, I got this. Here you go. And they felt comfortable. So that's why it was always a return. But this time around, it's like I didn't know you. And I was like, I've never dealt in that situation where I had to, serve somebody I did not know. You know what I mean? So I was just like, I was super hesitant. I was like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I was still in that mind frame, but when I got to Texas, I didn't have a plug. I didn't know anybody. You know what I mean? I started meeting people when I got that job at Bell's, and then I could have had a plug at that time. It no, we were selling food stamps. You know what I'm saying? That was like probably the safest lick that we had, going on. So to, make more on top of what I was making there, we were selling our food stamps. You know what I mean? Honestly, we didn't need, like, at that time it was just me, Justice, and Nina, my kid's mom. We were getting like $500 a month, and at that time that was a lot. You know what I mean? So we didn't need that much. You know what I mean? So we sold those. Um, you know, um, Time progressed. Eventually moved from Copper's Cove uh, to Killeen, and I'm fast forwarding because a lot of it was just basically kind of like growing up and trial and error. Like us, me and my kid's mom, our relationship started to fluctuate from healthy to toxic, healthy to toxic. We were using a lot of drugs at that time. We were doing a lot of cocaine, a lot of cocaine. I mean, I was surprised at how much of that was floating around Texas, but it was just a lot, dude. Um, and we eventually, started getting back into the hallucinogenics, mushrooms, ran across some LSD. So eventually, that stuff came back to me. You know what I mean? Like, but it was in a different way. It was in a different state around different circumstances. I still wasn't, gonna sell, but I had enough of it around me to where it was like, okay, as soon as I ran out, I was able to get more just like that. It wouldn't take long at all. So we lived that party lifestyle out here. We were just really just using at that point in time, with no direction, and that fueled a lot of the fights. We were hardly ever, I don't think we ever were sober for like any extended period of time. We were just like chasing the high at that point. We moved to Killeen, and we left all those people that we met in Cove, and we moved to Killeen, and it was kind of like getting started all over again. Getting to know people, but these people that met in Killeen, they stuck around for like a greater part of 16 and a half years I was living in Killeen. And, after about year 8, year 9, those relationships that I built in Killeen, it started to feel very comfortable, like I was in Oceanside, California. I mean, yeah, even in Killeen, I met people to where I was able to, get the pharmaceuticals that I desired, right? I was able to meet those people again. But the difference was, it was like, they were like super, kind of like, oh, you guys are really playing the system. Like, you're living here, y'all saving up all this money doing this. And we would party a lot, and all, and then the plugs would party with me, and then they would start, letting me hang out with them and whatnot. And then, they kind of like, kept me at bay at the beginning because I had Justice and Essence was just born. So it's just like, you're a new dad, so we're not trying to put you in the middle of all of this. You know what I mean? But as the kids got older and I started, becoming more familiar, being around them more, trust began to come. And then, eventually when I started going to college, Central Texas College, like in 2006, um, 2004, I started going to college. And then that's when I started supplementing my income. This time I started selling weed again. And that was the only thing that I was able to get my hands on. I was like, I'm not going to do cocaine, you know what I mean? Because it was just too much of a risk, you know what I mean? So I had a choice. But, the more weight, like the more pounds I was able to get my hands on, that it could supplement my income that way. So I was going to college. I had a work study at the gym, and that started me going to, like, that started my gym lifestyle. From that point, I still mess with the gym, but and there was a break in between, which we'll get into that. But I started my work study at the gym there, and I would sell weed on the side. And when I'm at school, actually, when I'm at school doing my studies, my baby mom would sell out the house. So it was a constant running door. We were catching whatever we caught every customer that we could catch. Started getting to the point where um, I started thinking like, man, when I was in California, I remember I grew my own weed. I cut out the middleman. So I explained my kid's mom the whole process of what, how that would look like. And she was like, if you could do it, do it. I took the walk-in closet that we had and in the house that we were living on Hercules Avenue in Killeen. Actually, no, Castellon Court, I'm sorry, in Killeen. And I started growing there. Um, First few tries, because I haven't really dialed in the process. First few harvests were just not that great. um but after about a good year and a half of just going, like, doing 3 month cycle, a 3 month vegetation, and then you know flowering at that point, it was dialed in to be like, every 6 months, I would be producing something. um, you know, kind of kept it to like 10 plants in the closet, and we were just going back and forth with that. It was pretty lucrative cycle too. I was saving a lot at first because it wasn't like I was getting rid of it really quickly, because I still had some, I was still buying my pounds and then selling them. So I was just letting this stack up while I was doing that. So after about a good year and a half, 2 years of doing that, I was like, okay, I cut that person out and I became my own person, you know, all while going through college. So I was supplementing my income this way. She would sell while I was at school, and then when I get home, I'd go and hang out with people, and I was, sell to them. I was never affiliated with any gang. I'm gonna go ahead and say that right now. Never affiliated. I was just that person that became cool with everybody, all walks of life in that circle. So it wasn't like, I was affiliated with one particular set. I know all about gang politics, and that was one of the things that I'm glad that I wasn't a part of it, because some of the politics were really bad. You know what I'm saying? So I wasn't bound by none of that, but I did respect everybody, and everyone had the respect of me because I was straightforward and honest about it. Um, and that's why I was able to move the way I was able to move, because I wasn't faking it. I wasn't pretending. I was straight up who I was, and they respected that. If I didn't have the respect that I had, I wouldn't have been able to do what I was able to do. Um, so by the time I was graduating with my associate's degree, I was linked up with people that I used to go to school with in California, and they were growing and I was growing, and they was like, look, when you're in between harvests, we can send you some, and then when we're in between harvests, you can send us some, so that way we'll never be without, and your inventory won't be low. I was like, okay, so how would you get it to me? Will mail it to you. I was like, what? I was like, wait, whoa, what? You'll mail it to me? I was like, okay. Um, the idea was like, it sounded cool at first because it was all words. I mean, at this point, it was all words. I was, geeked out about it. I was like, babe, you know, he's finna mail me. I'm finna, you know what I'm saying? And then he's gonna teach me how to send it back to him. And she was just like, oh, for real? But isn't that, federal? Because it's crossing state line. I was like, yeah, but it'll be okay. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't really thinking about it. I was like, I'm an in the moment person. The guy that I was going to get my stuff mailed from and me mailed to him when we were between harvests, he was like, has anybody out there in Texas ever had any candy or any wax, before? And I was like, candy, wax, what do you mean? And he was just like, I'm gonna send you some lollipops and I'm gonna send you some wax. And this was before it started crawling. That I knew that it was crawling through Texas. You know what I mean? So my homeboy Jeremy, we used to go out to all the happy hours one night. I was like, well, this is perfect because, I'll just, sit at the bar with him and just start, introducing people to this stuff. So he sent that, the first package I'll never forget, the first shipment that he sent via mail. I went and deposited my money in my bank account and I wired it to him, and confirmation of the money. I already knew he was gonna send it. I had no doubt. Um, he sent me the tracking number and everything, and then I was able to track it, where it was going. The day it landed into my mailbox, you would think I would run out there immediately to go get it. No, I was like every Hollywood movie about this started running through my head. Like, every car creeping slowly through the neighborhood was, the police, or the feds. I was like, but they're not even on to me. So why would I be, freaking out about this? Like he kept, calling, asking, did you, sending text, did you go to the mailbox yet? Did you get it? Did you get it? Because it's showing on my end that it arrived. Um, I didn't go out to the mailbox right away. Like, you should, if you could see how I walked to the mailbox. I walked to the mailbox, I looked at it, I walked past the mailbox, I turned around, walked up to the mailbox, looked at it, and then I kept walking to the mailbox, went to my house, and I was like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And so then, Nina was like, did you go? I was like, all right, let me go. So I went to the mailbox. I opened it. They had the key to where you get a package. So I went in there. I reached. I got the key. I shut my mailbox. I closed it, and I was like, oh my god, oh my god. And so far there was no car, and I just said to myself, just do it all at once. And if anything, just deny it. Like, just tell them it was the wrong package, wrong house. So I opened it, grabbed it, and I just walked right into the house really quick. And then we waited like, about like a good hour before we, tore into it. Um, Nothing. Nobody came knocking on the door. The Hollywood scenario about as soon as you would grab the package, the police be on you. Like, none of that happened. So then I opened the box. I was like, how come I don't smell anything? This dude he was just so good at it. I don't know how many times he vacuum sealed this, but it was a vacuum seal on top of vacuum seal on top of vacuum seal. It was sealed so good that the only thing you smelled was the plastic in the box. But as soon as I cut through all those layers, like, ooh, wow, yeah, he was smart too. He had the candy wrapped up in wrapped up like, gifts. So he had like a T-shirt in there with a coffee mug, and the candies were put, rolled up and inside the coffee mug as a gift, and then the wax was folded up into the shirt, and it was like a big care package. You know what I mean? So nobody thought anything of it. You know what I'm saying? Because the marijuana was vacuum sealed in such a way it looked like a pillow. You know what I mean? Like, and it was that thick, so no one knew. Eventually, when I got accepted into Texas A&M off of academics, mind you, I'm doing all of this, and I made the dean's list at Central Texas College. I mean, my GPA was like averaging 3.84. I made the dean's list, dude. I was on a grind. You know what I mean? And I get accepted to Texas A&M just purely off of academics alone. So I started going there, and then at that point, I graduated to a university, but I also graduated on how I was distributing, my weight, where you would go through the machine wash part, and then you would come out, park your car, and then the females would literally detail, and it was women. The women would detail your car, shine your tires, buff everything out, and then they would come in and give you your keys. So we were selling to the military, but the way we would do it was they would, when they come in, depending on, which service they ordered for, how to get their car washed, that's how we knew what they wanted in terms of marijuana. So so, and the females were in on it too. So they would detail their cars, and while they were detailing their cars, they would put it in the armrest what they want. They would take the money out and they drive off. No one knew. The only way that operation was going to mess itself up was from within, and that did happen. And man, did it suck. Like, me and my kid's mom just get the relationship just continued to deteriorate, even though we were making hand over fist money. It just We could not just get along. It was like we were already 10 plus years with being with each other. At this time, all four of the kids were born. We were evolving the business. We went from We went from selling at the car wash to making our own vegetable oil out of all of the stuff that we had from the harvest. So we were like, we were selling vegetable oil. People can cook with it. Like we made spaghetti out of it. We fried chicken out of it. We were buying like the 99-cent packs of like brownies and cookies, and we were making cookies and brownies and selling those too. I mean, we were like, it was evolving on its own, but we were falling apart as a unit. Um, One day the argument got so bad. I think this was just like an alcohol, cocaine induced argument. But she was like, how about if I just call the feds and tell them exactly what you're doing? I said, for real? I tore it all down. And then finished college. We were still falling apart. By 2014, it was bad to the point where we were like physically getting into a fight, and at that time, I was I was on blood thinners because I did have, and I'm gonna pause there and go into the progression of my health because it'll explain what happened at that point, on why there was like a lot of blood in my urine, you know. Um, so while I was in community college, I finally was able to get Medicaid, and I started going to the doctors right away. I got with Dr. Mixon, and normally you would have to have a referral to see him. I just went straight to his office and I gave him my outpatient file, and um, his his charge nurse, his PA actually called me and was like, we want to schedule an appointment with you. And so I scheduled the appointment with him, and I met with him, and he said, how did you find me? I said, I just flipped through the phone book and I just saw your name, and I called your office and I went in there with my file. He was like, because you don't get to me unless you're referred. But he was like, but after reading your file, he was like, I decided to take you because this is a unique situation you got going on here. He immediately sent me through rounds of testing you had when you were 5. It it's long overdue for uh, we'll just say a tune-up, right? The valve that you had was a pig flesh valve. It's degraded to the point where your heart is the the blood flow in your mitral valve, it's not closing all the way, so you're getting a lot of backflow. So it's supposed to meet like this as a door closing. Mine was just going like this, and there was no, like, the flaps here were degraded, so there was no flesh. There was like a little, you could see in the echo that it was just like flesh meeting down, but it was like blood going in, blood going out, not good. Deoxygenated blood, oxygenated blood, but a lot of the oxygenated blood wasn't fully oxygenated, so it was just pushing it back into my system. Um, I went, Baylor Scott and White. They did the first surgery in 2007, and they put a cow valve in me. And then, that was going good, but then they also wanted to send me for more testing because they was like, your arrhythmia was getting really bad. Like your heart is like it's skipping beats to where it's putting you into a fatal rhythm, and it's really scary. So I passed for needing a defibrillator pacemaker. Um, so we began the process doing that, mind you, while I'm going through college, while I got, this extra money coming in from these activities, and while I'm going through this in going through this in the hospital while going to college. I was like, well, I'm glad everything is set up the way it's set up, because if anything was to happen to me, at least you could still make money and figure and enough of it at a time to where you could figure out a plan for you and the kids. You know what I mean? Because at this point, I didn't know what was going on with me. It didn't seem promising. It was like, I had one foot in, one foot out. That's how I was looking at life, and that's how it felt. The first time they put the pacemaker defibrillator in, it was supposed to be like an hour procedure. It lasted 4 hours. And the reason why was, one, when they got it put in, they have to send you into a fatal heart attack for the device to bring you out. Well, when they sent me into that rhythm, device kept going off, but it wasn't treating the heart. So I went and literally flatlined on on the table right there. So they freaked out, brought me back. They waited for a little bit, and they did it again. And the device was going off, but the heart wasn't receiving the shock. So I ended up flatlining again on that table. And so then once they brought me out the second time, they was like, "We're gonna stop." You know, they're gonna stop the procedure because at your heart, even though it's an involuntary muscle, on a cellular level, getting shocked 360 joules is a lot of stress on the heart. You know, and I was shocked twice like that. You know what I mean? So, you know, when I woke up from that procedure, I mean, I was swollen in the chest here, I was swollen in the back. And I was like, you know, my chest felt like I woke up immediately. I was like, what did you guys do to me? You know? And then it was explained to me what happened. And then they wanted to bring me back 6 months later because that was like the recovery time that your heart can recover from being shocked like that. You know, being on blood thinners was I was high risk for, you know, if there was any trauma to my outside, I could potentially um, be bleeding internally. So I have to be careful on any slips and falls, anything. Um, Me and my kid's mom, we were going at it like it was just like really bad. Um, the the day before my daughter's birthday, there was just like this big old fight, you know, and then the kids got involved in it, and um, like the kids were pulling us, like trying to pull us apart. You know, they were hitting on both of us to get us to stop. So they're hitting me upside my head and stuff, and they're hitting their mom. And, you know, they're just pulling. The dogs got involved. I mean, it was just really bad. Um, Pulled apart. Something didn't feel right. You know, later that night, you know, my urine started looking like, you know, like cranberry juice. I was like, I didn't think nothing of it. And so I just went to sleep, you know, woke up. It was Essence's birthday. I went to use the restroom and it was a light cranberry color. I was like, okay, well, it's not that bad. So I didn't think anything of it. And so we were watching, Ninja Turtles eating Essence's favorite food, which was like, you know, hot wings and carrot sticks and celery sticks with ranch. So we were just sitting out eating that, and I ended up going to the bathroom. And I went into the restroom, and it looked like iced tea that I was urinating. And I was like, now that freaked me out. Um, I collected some of it, and I told my baby mom, "Hey, I'm gonna drive myself to the hospital." You know, I drove myself to the hospital, and I showed the lady what I had collected, and she was like, they admitted me right there. They was like, "Yeah, um, what happened?" I just, plausible deniability. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. And they was just like, first things first was they had to safely let me off the warfarin, like to let the warfarin just kind of like taper off so that the bleeding would stop, and then they shot me up with Lovenox to get my blood back to therapeutic, and then put me back on my warfarin, and then let it stabilize, and then I go home, and that was like a 2 week process. Um, During that time, I was just like I wanted all the fighting and the stuff to stop. I opened up to, a counselor at the hospital what was going on about, the drug usage and the fighting and all that other stuff. And, CPS got involved, and, I didn't think nothing of it. I didn't think anything of it after doing all this. I thought they were just going to, come and put some order in the home, force us to go get better, um, y- rehab, yada, yada. Well, when I get there and I'm just getting out the hospital, mind you, my kid's mom, she didn't want to come pick me up. So I ended up walking home from the hospital that day. I get home, and immediately there's like, you need to come from this bed, go to the other bed because you're not out the woods yet. So I finally get home, I go to bed, and then the lady from CPS is knocking on the door. And so I come out, and I'm still in my hospital gown. I come out, and we're all sitting at the table, whatnot. She's animated. She being, my kid's mom at this time, we're not even seeing eye to eye anymore. We're like enemies to each other. Um, you know, the lady from CPS, despite the fact that I just got out the hospital because I was bleeding internally, she was not helpful at all. She was just like, well, at this point, there one or two things could happen. She was just like, you either, one of you leave the home, and the kids stay here, or or we remove one of you guys from the home. I said, okay, well, fine, she can leave because her mom is around the corner. I just got out the hospital. I could be here with the kids. She was like, no, I mean, you can leave. I was like, you know what I mean? I just got out the hospital. I have nobody here. Where am I gonna go? Um, Cops was at the door, or whatever. And that decision had to be made right then and there, like right then and there. And she wasn't budging, I wasn't budging, and the cops were outside. And mind you, at this time, I never had any running with the law, so I was just like, you know what, I'll leave. You know what I mean? I grabbed the blanket, what I could grab. I grabbed my medicine, and then I put on some warm clothes because it was like 33 degrees that day, and I started walking out the door. And the cops literally looked at me. They was like, you know what, Mr. White, we're not making you leave. We're not, if you don't leave, we understand, but we understand why you're leaving too. And that's what's up. But, we're not gonna force you to leave the home. I said, man, just to keep the peace, bro, I'm just gonna leave. You know what I mean? So I left, I had my cell phone with me and I was walking the street. I didn't know where I was going at that point. So I just, I called my boy Jeremy. Jeremy came pick me up. you know, we were riding around in his truck, and he was just like, I called my brother, I called my mom, my dad. They, we got some tickets together because I ain't had no money on me. I left with nothing in my pocket. She had it all. Um, Got me a bus ticket, and I went to Las Vegas. And I was there for 30 days, and the whole time I was there, my mind was like, when I get home, when I get home, when I get home. 30 days was up. I came home, and it was just like the reckoning at that point. I was like, y'all forced me to leave in that situation. I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. I was like, in 6 months, I'm gonna leave. You can have all of this. Fast forward a little bit, she ended up leaving the house. One day I woke up, everybody was gone. It was just me and the dogs. The kids were gone, their clothes were gone. I mean, she took who would do this? Took the food out the refrigerator, took the toiletries, like everything was gone, and this happened while I was asleep, and I was sleeping in the bonus room, so I had no idea this was happening. I called them, and then, and my kids were all on my side. I knew my oldest son. I was like, let me speak to Justice. I was like, where are you? Do you want to come home? And my son said something to me that was like not like him. He said, you know, I don't want to talk to you, and I don't want to live with you, and hung the phone up. I was like, that's not my son. Like, I know my kids, you know what I'm saying? My kids will never say that to me. You know what I mean? I was calling them back, and then no one would answer my call. So I was like, whatever. I went on trying to repair my life from that. You know what I mean? And so one day I got a call while I was at work. Somebody was like, you need to go home because something's going on at your house. So I go home from work. Jeremy drops me off, and everything in there is destroyed. Like, my clothes had like bleach and hot sauce all over them. Every cord to whatever electronics was cut. Dishes were broken. It's like the whole house was a mess. And I go outside and I look at the street, and her car's parked there, and I see her, reverse, and then, do a U-turn and drive off. I'm going to go look for her because now I'm fuming. I'm like, you take my kids, you leave, and now you destroy the home. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, I'm mad. You know, um, I eventually see her, and we're chasing each other. Like, I'm chasing her down the street, and she runs to a cop, and the cop has a boat sit on the sidewalk. You know what I mean? And she looked over to me, and she said something I could never forget. She was just like, "You're going to jail because you got warrants." I looked at her. I said, "I ain't never been in trouble with the law. I ain't got no warrants. I don't know what you're talking about." They let her go. One cop was questioning me. Another cop came. Well, you have a warrant for family violence. I said, "Family what? Who? Wait, whoa, 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 whoa. I ain't never family violence anybody. I ain't never touched my kids like that. None of that. Turns out turns out they went to a shelter, and for her to get assistance, from that shelter, because she wanted to have everything in her name. So in order for that to happen, she took the kids, went to a shelter, claimed that they were being abused, and for them to give her public assistance, she had to um, she had to agree to allow the state to put a warrant out for my arrest for family violence, and also was signing, like, TANF, to get cash aid for TANF and all that other stuff, because we weren't getting cash aid or whatever. So she signed for cash aid, and for all those stipulations was like they're going to come after me for all the assistance that they're giving to you. So that was the first time I ever ever did any type of time in jail. I'm like, this was foreign to me. Like, I get in there, I was just like, man, I didn't know what to do. My boy Jeremy, he was, when I was getting my phone call privileges, I was calling him, and he was telling me every step of the way what was going on. He was like, right now, I can't get you an attorney, so don't get a public defender. Don't even okay for one. Just forego it, because they're not going to do anything for you. They're going to give you they're going to make a deal with the DA, and you're still going to get screwed in the end. So just don't even go that route. I was like, so then what do I do until then? He said, you're going to have to sit there. You're going to have to sit there and until this plays out. I was like, what? I mean, I was 35 years old. I just got out of college. I was just in the hospital a few months ago. I didn't know what to do. I was just like, man, didn't call my parents, because I was just like, man, I didn't want them to know where I was at. So I sat there. It had to be every bit of like 93 days I sat there. You know what I'm saying? Um, by that time, they was just like, we're gonna go ahead and give you time served, and this is what Jeremy was talking about. Sit it out, get time served, and it'll be on your record, but you won't have to do any probation or anything like that. But he was like, you're gonna have to sign over your rights, your right to possess a firearm. I was like, no way. By that time, I had a collection of guns. You know what I'm saying? Um, but he was right. I get in there. They was like, okay, now sign this document saying that you understand that you are no longer allowed to own any firearms. So I signed my rights over due to some act that was, enacted. Anybody who's convicted of family violence, they can no longer own a firearm, possess a firearm. So I signed over those rights. They gave me time served, and let me go about my business. That day when I got out, I went back to Vegas. I was living out there, and my brother was trying to help me piece my life back together. You know, um, During that time, my kid's mom was reaching out to me. She was talking to me and whatnot, making me believe everything was okay, whatnot. So I fell for the trap. Came home, didn't know that there was a protective order out on me. Like, I wasn't allowed to be around my kids for 2 years, 1,000 feet. Couldn't go to. My daughter was a cheerleader. I was still paying for her to be a cheerleader, but I never saw her cheer a game ever. Which tore me to pieces. I used to have to watch from a fence. The fence was here, well, like right out on the street, which was like the end of the soccer field, and down there, straight shot farther. Like, I wouldn't need binoculars. I didn't own a pair, but further down there was where the football game was, and she was cheering. I couldn't see where she was cheering at or not. Never got to see her cheer. Uh, that began my downhill spiral. I mean, I started using real heavily, drinking very heavily. I mean, I was living out of my car, um, you know, motels, from place to place. I got a job at a motel just so I can, have a place to stay. I started sleeping with the manager there, so we ended up being together. She was toxic, enabled me in that lifestyle. So, we were doing a lot of drugs together, just using, I just was falling, I was becoming a shell of who I was. I started going to the gym at that time, of course. Um, didn't lift weight for God, like 8 years after that. I just fell to pieces during that time frame. I tried to kill myself, a lot of times. Like, and I wasn't talking about like I tried everything except I didn't have a gun, so I couldn't, use that. Otherwise, I would have. I mean, I knew how to cut my wrist, not straight across, but straight down. I did that. I did that. I sat in a hot shower so the wound wouldn't close up. It would just stay open and bleed out. So I would just sit in the tub and just let the shower run on me, and the water would go, and then I would, I would bleed out enough to where I would start feeling lightheaded, and then I just went into my room, and then I just kind of like swigged down some alcohol, and I passed out on the floor. I woke up, and it was. Yeah, I woke up, nothing happened. I was mad, I was cussing. I was cussing a God I didn't believe in. Like, am I still here? I did everything right, so I tried again. This time I did it on my neck. I nicked the artery on my neck because I went so deep that one time I did it on both sides of my neck because I was leaving nothing up to chance. And it was blood everywhere, everywhere. I thought I did it. I was like, okay, finally, So, you know, um, I laid down. I took some sleeping pills, like a lot of them, like not like one or two. I think I just might have downed like the whole bottle because I went to the Family Dollar and got some some Tylenol PMs, and I thought I was going to do it that way. And I swallowed those, and then I chased it down by trying to overdose on my heart meds too at the same time. So I was leaving nothing to chance. I laid down on that carpet and I passed out. Now, I ended up waking up the next morning, but when I woke up, it was like the carpet served as a gauze, and I was applying pressure while I was lying down on that carpet, and it closed the wound up. So it was like he stopped that. He was just like, like, even though, like, I mean, I always keep a picture of what my apartment looked like during that time as a reminder of where I was at that point in my life. And yeah, man, like at that point I was just like, it that bell rung in my head, like, okay, there is a God, but I'm still going through hell. So immediately I went back to that negative mentality. But yeah, when I think about it, it was like, yeah, he stopped that from happening because, like, what are the odds? I passed out in such a way where I'm applying pressure to the wound that I inflicted on my neck on the carpet, and the carpet was thick enough to serve as gauze to stop the bleeding and keep it from bleeding any further, and then everything from there just scabbed over. So when I woke up, I mean, I peeled my neck off the ground. It didn't reopen it because it scabbed over enough to where it stayed closed. So I put, bandages on my neck, and it was really sore, like really sore and tender on my neck. Like I couldn't turn left or right. It was like, I stayed, I closed all the curtains in my place. I locked the doors. Kelly, who was, my girlfriend at the time, who, enabled me, she came down, sat with me, we drank a lot, and, we, smoked and used, just for the pain. I didn't eat for like a week. She was like, you need to eat something. And like, I was more than a shell. I couldn't even recognize who I was anymore. And I was just like, I just given up on life. I lost my kids. I wasn't able to see them. Like my life was essentially destroyed. I wasn't used to coming home, and it was quiet. Like I was used to coming home, and my kids, even my dogs, were running up to me like, I miss you. But I would come home to none of that, and that was tearing me up. And it was like, I always tell people, it's like, you know the love I got from my kids and my family was like, imagine just like being on like crack for 16 years and then all of a sudden they take it away from you just instantly. Like, how would you feel? Like, you would feel devastated. You know what I mean? Even though, that's like the wrong analogy, but that's what I used at the time because that's where my mind was at. But yeah, I was devastated, man. Like, like I really was. And then once all those wounds healed from my attempt to take my life, I made a promise to myself, I would never do that again. I ended up leaving that woman that was toxic for me, like, and that was the last time I was a part of anything toxic in my life. Um, and I stayed that time, single and just kind of like finding myself. And I end up finding out that my back started getting really really bad. The nerve impingements was like literally making my leg numb. And I saw an orthopedic surgeon. And I was like, yeah, you're gonna. He was like, not only did the fusion you had in your spine on your spine when you were 14 did not take. It was like you got 2/3 of that rod just floating back there. It wasn't even fully fused to your spine. So they was like, we're gonna have to go and do another one. So in 2001, I ended up having another spinal fusion done, and I was in the hospital during Christmas time. But during that time, you know, um, I was living by myself. I did have roommates, at the time, but essentially still living by myself. I was confined to a bed for 3 months, and I had a brace on as well. So I was just literally just laying in the bed, and at that time I was living a very promiscuous lifestyle. I was going to Club Colette, which is, if anybody ever been there before, that was kind of like a swingers club. You know what I'm saying? And I was running around with that group of people. Working with an aviation company. It was like an upstart, a semi charter. They flown a lot of celebrities around. I had the courtesy or the honor of meeting a few over the phone and in person, so it was great. But essentially, I was living out of a suitcase. I was single, didn't have anybody to look after. I was paying child support. My kids didn't really care if I was living or dead. So I was just living my life. And then on 2021 in December, that was kind of like everything just stopped. I had that surgery, and I was home alone, just me, my thoughts, and the four walls. And I made promises to myself that, hey, this time around, I started praying for some reason. I started praying, but um, I started saying, I was making these promises to God, like, yeah, not promise I'll change my life. No, I was promised, like, I promise as soon as I heal, I'm never gonna be home. I'm gonna be all over the world. I'm breaking hearts. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? I'm doing whatever I want to do. I didn't care who it was. Everybody's on the table. Anybody can get it. I don't care. So I was swearing that I was just gonna be just this person that seemed to be good, but I had evil intentions. But then after about 2 months, 2.5 months of just being on bed rest and not having nobody, I was confined to the home. Um, I was like, I need human interaction, because why I'm not gonna lie, while I was still healing, I was still doing drugs while I was healing. I was like, I was bored, so I had this stash. I was like, I might as well just dip into that stash too while I was healing. I was bored. And then the idea came in my head, hey, why don't I just, jump on one of these dating websites and just chat up some women, you know? So I jumped on one, paid for a subscription or whatever, and I started, chatting them up. My intentions was not to meet anybody. My intentions was to just chat because I was bored. It was just me, painkillers, drugs, TV, and that's it. I could barely get up and move around as it was, but I could definitely, type on my phone with my fingers, you know what I'm saying, and talk if someone gave me their phone number. So I was talking with some people, and then I got to the point where my doctor was like, "Okay, I'm gonna allow you to get up and move around." So I eventually started, chatting with some of these people, and I went out on one date with someone. And that didn't turn out too well. And then I came home. Plus, not only that, when I went out on that date, I realized I wasn't fully healed, because it was just like after about like 3 hours, I was like, I need to go back to the bed. So I went back, I laid down, and I stayed off my back. I stayed off my feet for about another good, 3 weeks to a month. But during that time, I met Dorica. Like, um, her profile like popped up on my thread, and she was like hi, and I said hello. I was like, are you catfish or something like that? She's like, are you? I was like, no. And then like we chatted. It was just like that was like one of the most friendliest conversations I've ever had. So we ended up chatting more and more and more. Like 7 days straight we chatted, and I was just like, she was like, she gave me her number, I gave her my number, and then we just started texting and talking and video chatting. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want to tell her about, what I'm going through in terms of like medical, because she might just up and run. So I didn't say anything. I did tell her that I just had surgery and I'm on bed rest. That's why we can't go out. But, we ended up meeting up. Our first day was a smash. It was great. I knew instantly when I saw her. I was like, yeah, I ain't going no. Like, I want her. And we end up, taking it to the next level, taking it serious. I started driving to Roy City. I was like, when I first came out here, I was like, what is this place? You know what I'm saying? It's like it's complete coming from Dallas to Roy City. I was like, are you about to rob me or something? Because I'm driving a long ways to get robbed. You know what I'm saying? Like, for real, you could have just did that around the corner on Skillman. You know what I mean? Um, but nah, I eventually pulled up over there, and it was great. It was great. And then like eventually I was over there so much, she was just like, why don't you just move out here? I was just like, okay. So I was still hesitant, because I was like, I haven't lived with anybody at that time for a long time. I was single for about 2.5, almost 3 years. So I was like, okay, I got a storage spot, move all my stuff into storage, and then kind of just was paying for that just in case, because I was like, just in case she wigs out on me, and then I have to leave. At least I have a place. Didn't turn out that way. Um, After a while, she was just like, I want to start going back to church, and I was just like, you said the wrong words. And so I said, like, literally, I was already like, I'm about to go. And I felt something come over me. It was like, just something was just like, just tell her why you feel uneasy about going to church. So I explained to her everything, and then she was just like, I don't blame you if you don't want to go. Would I like it for you to go? Yes, but I'm not gonna force you. She was just like, but these are really good people, and it's come as you are. And I promise I won't tell nobody what it is. But I was like, you know what, for you, I'll give it a shot. you know I go into this church, I go to church with her, and it really is as come as you are. But then when I walk in there, I was like, some of these people have been at these football games that we go to, and then I see Daniel, and I met Daniel at Roel's. And I was just like, no way, you really are a pastor. You know what I'm saying? And then we were already good friends at that time. So then when he saw me and I saw him, it was just like, in my mind, I was like, oh yeah, I'm sticking with this church. Um, but I wanted to hear what the preaching was like. Like, how did he go about, delivering the word? And it was in a comfortable way where it was just relaxed, not forced, and it just seemed organic. So I was just like, yeah, I'm sold. And I hate saying I'm sold like that, because it was never pitched in a manner as if it was a sales type of a pitch, but it was just like, my soul was in it, my spirit was in it. I'm in it. And from that day forth, I continued to go, all the way up until, and then what made me get baptized was when my defibrillator went off last May, and I found out that I was told I was in full blown heart failure. I was just like, me and Pastor Daniel, we talked almost every night when I was in that hospital for 2 weeks. And I told him, I was like, he was like, well, that Sunday when you get out, we're holding baptisms. I said, I'm coming, I'll be there. That Sunday I went and got baptized, so I saved myself. voluntarily walked back into a church where it was just like I swore since I was a child to never go back into a church, to never step foot into a church. And I had a very, very good reason for to just never even deal with it. But here I am, you know, I I walk into a church willingly, and I always say I willingly made a decision not to go, but I was a child. And I willingly made a decision to come back, and I was a man. And I was influenced a little bit because, you know, I always say this. I was like, I always tell her this, like, you saved my life. Like, he sent me somebody good that was prepared to help me walk, not guide me, but just grab my hand and help me walk in the right direction. And that was her. I would have never even considered stepping foot in a church again if it wasn't for her. And that's where I am now with my life. I'm involved with the church. I serve as much as I can. And I don't see me stopping that at this point in my life. It's something that I miss. Do I regret all that? A lot of time, like what, 30 years of not going? Yeah. Do I regret it? Yeah, absolutely, I do. Um, but I learned is, I have to forgive myself. Because I was already forgiven before I even walked through the doors. I just needed to learn how to, and I still do to this day, am having a hard time dealing with my own personal shame and my own personal guilt uh, for all of what I've done and what I've been through, um, and just essentially just sinning against God the way in which I did, and now coming back. And the day that I did come back, I was just like, "Why are you so good to me?" When at first I was like, "Why did you let me go through all of that as a kid?" You know, um, I still ask him that question, why are you so good to me? When I wasn't good back to you. But now I'm starting to understand, and it's a work in progress every day, and it's not me it's not just me saying, I'm a Christian just for the title's sake. I pray every day, you know. I may miss a few days just because life may get in the way, but it doesn't mean my heart misses those moments. I'm always positive, and I respect my family, and I have a new family now too, thanks to him. Like he given me everything that I lost. He's given it back to me. You know, um, I love being a father, a leader, more than anything else. And when I wasn't that person, I felt a shell of myself. And now he's blessed me with that again. Um, he's given me something I've never had, which is a healthy relationship, a healthy life. You know, um, I'm I've been sober now for going on 2 years. Um, I'm back to who I am. At the version of this person that I am, drug free, drink free, just like bad influence free. I don't have that in my life anymore. You know, the the only drugs I do are the medications that are prescribed to me now. But yeah, I go to church every Sunday. I try to go every Sunday. You know, that if I get sick or whatnot. Um, I'm a father to, I've been blessed with a chance to be a father to two, wonderful boys, one 12, one 17, and help guide them, the best that I can, because I know they've been through enough too as well. So we're a family that have all need to heal in some manner, and we're healing with the help of each other. Um, I love the life that I have now. And, despite, the challenges that are, up and coming with it, I know they're for a reason. We're building to be something good. It's okay to feel how you feel. You have to go through that. in order to see the good at the end of it. But what I would say is don't give up on yourself. Um, because you can easily get lost in that. I hate to say it, and I don't think anyone will understand it, but there is a level of comfort once you give up on yourself and you decide to cross that line. Like there's a comfortability. It's a scary thing to say, but there is a comfortability. Just don't give up on yourself. Just remain positive and lean on those that are positive and not toxic around you. I do want to say that, you hear it a lot is uh easier said and harder to receive when you're going through it, but God is good. My name is Jonathan Waddy, and this is my story.